Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Meeting of the Gold Mines. It's been a minute. Again, Happy New Year for all those. Happy 2024. For all those Laker fans, I wish we had better news. I wish we were in a better state. But we're going to dive into that. It's been a hiatus for us, but we just felt that it was time to kind of like, now that we're closer to the halfway point, trying to figure this out and try to give some reviews here in terms of like what's the status of the Lakers and what can we look forward to. But I'm not alone here. I'm with my PGM brother. Playoff. How's it going, man?
Doing pretty good. It's been a little minute since we've had a moment to chat, other than in the playbacks. But it's bittersweet, obviously. Love talking about the Lakers, but not exactly happy with the state of the Lakers at the moment.
Yeah.
So here we are.
Yeah. Agreed. It's not. It's not easy. It's not like and for those who are Dallas fans and Laker fans, I give you sincere condolences. That's all I can say.
Yeah, it's a rough
Um,
way. It's a rough way for the season, man.
that's a rough way to end the season, like extremely rough way to end the season. Hopefully, Lakers can do better. But Tim, we're here with Tim again. If you haven't seen the episode, we did one of the episodes the beginning of the season with Tim. We broke down kind of like Darvin Ham and what to expect in terms of the X's and O's. But now, Tim, how you doing, man? Like, how's it going?
I'm doing okay. The Lakers aren't, but believe it or not, it appears they're heading in the right direction from some X's and O's standpoints. Although 3-7 in the last 10 games, they're now 9.5 games out of first place, 4.5 games out of the 6th seed, and avoiding that play-in. So if the state of mind for people joining today is like, things are burning, this is bad, I totally get it. Hopefully I can try to sway you a little bit, but I'm not going to tell you that these losses don't count. And that's the, every day I'm like, do we suck?
Yeah.
And there's time to turn things around. We had the same record last year, and I'd say our roster right now is better than last year's roster. So you can certainly turn things around, but they've really got to start hitting the gas here soon and making some moves.
So, and that's a good segue. That's actually an excellent segue because this time last year, currently we are 19-21 after 40 games for the second year in a row. So basically, last year we were the same record. The 2021 2022 Lakers were 21-19 after 40 games, which that's interesting. Um, in the span of that, AD missed 13 games last season. And we were right here at 19-21. And currently that's where the perplexing part is because I know we've sustained injuries. We've missed Gabe. Rui has been in and out of the lineup. There's been a lot of like fringe players in terms of like the like rotational players that's just been not they've been just in and out of the rotation. Like it just so happens, Torian Prince and Cam Reddish are immune to that. Except we'll dive into Cam Reddish later. But um, my point is like you said that this roster is better than last season's. Which last seasons are you talking about? Are you talking about the Russ era or are you talking about post Russ era, like post trade?
I'd say this roster as constructed is it should be better than both of those groups to me.
Okay.
And right now, I understand that AD and Braun have been more healthy, but to your point, we have seen a lot of the other guys go down, and that matters too. When you look at how frequently the Lakers have been missing 3 or more rotation players, which is a lot. Like that's 3 guys you're normally counting on, and I'm only looking at D'Lo, Vincent, Reeves, Reddish, Christie, Prince, Braun, Vando, Rui, AD, Wood, and Hayes. So if Hayes gets a DNPCD, that doesn't count. If Max Lewis is injured, that doesn't count. But when 3 or more of those 12 guys have been injured, the Lakers are 4-11. That's a 22-game win pace. And they've played about 40% of their games that way. And when they've had fewer than 3 rotation players out, they've won 16 out of 26 games. That's a 50 win pace on a season. So when healthy, the Lakers have played well. And I know that's a little different from like missing just the stars. And I don't know like which one of those is better or worse, but even though those top line guys have been healthy, this roster overall certainly hasn't. And we've seen that impact like their offensive rating, their defensive rating, like from a deflections per game standpoint, when they're missing fewer than 3 rotation guys, they've been a top 10 team in deflections. When they're missing 3 or more, they've been a bottom 3 team. So like, I'm sure other teams are good and bad at that when they're more or less injured, but we've seen like very much like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde with this Lakers roster based on who's available.
That makes sense. And I know it's not what the fans want to hear because playoff. Do you have the same sentiment, man? Like,
I mean, I definitely understand the information and the statistics, and it's like I guess the confusing part for the average fan is that the last couple of years is that either one or sometimes both AD and Bron have been hurt. And that's just, obviously that really takes away from the ceiling of this team when those two aren't available, or even if one of them isn't available. And so now we're on the opposite end of the spectrum where they've been healthy for the most part. And we're basically seeing something that we haven't seen where they've been mostly healthy. And then we have these, the other members of the rotation, Cam Reddish, for instance. He was a bit of a question mark coming into the season. And so, I don't think anyone thought he was going to turn into what he's turned into, which is a pretty valuable member of this Lakers rotation, regardless of how people outside of the Lakers universe might view him, because like I think most people are like, oh, well, it's Cam Reddish. He's not that good. He's not that impactful. But on this Lakers roster, in this Lakers rotation, he definitely is. And so, him being out, Rui's missed considerable amount of time. Gabe, we haven't even had an opportunity to really see what he adds to this rotation whatsoever. But it's just frustrating. And I think, again, the average Lakers fan, when Bron or AD are healthy, it's like everything's good. We're in good shape. Like that duo has been good enough to, I mean, prior to last playoffs, when those two played in a series together and they were both healthy, they had never lost a series. And so, it's frustrating to be on the opposite side of it now. And I don't think a lot of, like people see, I guess to pose this question to Tim, it's like people see the Miami Heat and it's like, Jimmy Butler barely plays, during the regular season, or when he does play, he's not really that impactful as he is in the playoffs. They've had issues with injuries as well. So seeing that team, Bam has missed a considerable amount of time. Jimmy has as well. So seeing that team able to have a consistent fight and a consistent effort on a nightly basis versus what we've seen from this Lakers team with AD and Bron largely healthy. How do you, I guess, how do those two kind of resonate with each other, or how do you make sense? How does a fan on the outside looking in make sense of that?
I think it's a really good question, and I think it's a fair question. Just at the highest of levels, looking at this roster and saying we've got 2 top 10 players, top 8, top 7, top 6. Don't know where you exactly want to put it, but like we got 2 top 5 to 10 players in the NBA. They've both been healthy pretty much the whole year. How in the world can we possibly be 11th place? Like that is such a fair question, and I would say that the health of the roster, just beyond just them, definitely does matter. And Cam Reddish, the fact that he's needed to step up the way he has really kind of speaks to the situation. Like Gabe Vincent, when I was looking at this team and seeing what they could be, he was a big part of that. Like he's a off-ball guard. I know he's not like a Dennis Schroeder on-ball, run a bench unit guy, but in a LeBron AD lineup, he should be able to space the floor decently, play good point of attack defense, and just fit. And we haven't seen much of him. Rui's been missing a bunch of time, and he's someone that just kind of fits. And some of those connecting pieces, like Austin Reeves, he's taken on more offensive responsibility. We've seen his defense take a little bit of a step back. And so there are certain lineups we can't run that we'd like to run. There are other lineups that, now we need Max Christie. Now we need Cam Reddish to step in and get the job done. And some of those guys, I would say for huge stretches of this season, haven't been used in ways that are going to allow us as fans to see them at their best self. Like when you look at Miami and you look at like Duncan Robinson, there are ways to use him well. There are ways to use him poorly. Like right now, he's a movement shooter. If he's used as a stationary shooter where he's just standing still, he's not impactful offensively, or he's not nearly as impactful. And that's how we've used Taurean Prince this year. Both of those guys are good off-screen guys. They should be running around flare screen and spin downs. That's what forces the defense to communicate, to pay attention to them. If they just stand still, it's good to hit 40% of your threes, but you're not drawing any extra help. It doesn't make life easier for your stars. And so like there's a good, they use their guy well. We mostly haven't, although Prince recently has been used in off-ball screens way more. When you look at Robinson defensively, his defensive role this year at B-Ball Index is as a helper. He is an off-ball kind of rotating, not taking on any tough matchups. That's a good way to use him because he's not good on ball as a defensive player, and that kind of minimizes the negative impact he can have. When we look at this Lakers team, we've seen like Taurean Prince guarding point of attack for much of the year until recently. And like little things like that, like that's not the way to use him. Or like Christian Wood, Jackson Hayes, those guys, when you use them in drop coverage, they look like G leaguers. Like they don't belong. When you switch with them or when you hedge with them, like that's what they're good at. That's what the Lakers brought them to the team. They should have known what they're good at. And we haven't seen them for most of the year be used that way. Up until the past 7 or 8 games, about 80% of their pick and roll coverages between Hayes and Wood had been drop coverage, which is the wrong answer for them. And recently it's been skewed much more heavily towards what they're good at. But like when we talk about how do you succeed without those stars, it's by making the absolute most of everybody else you have. And credit to Miami, they coached the hell out of that team. Their scheme is good. They got guys in the right roles. This Lakers team, I see a team like with Max Christie, he had about a 1-to-1 ratio of doing on-ball stuff, which right now he's not good at, and off-ball stuff, which he's pretty good at. He's a great cutter. He's shooting 44% on spot-up threes. There's a good way and a wrong way to use him. Most of the year was a 1-to-1 ratio, which is bad. Recently, it's been like a 6-to-1, 5-to-1 ratio towards what he's good at. So we've seen the Lakers misuse a lot of their role players for much of the year. And then recently they've started using them in the right ways. And as the team gets healthier, I'd expect better results. But coaching is a big piece of this. And that's how you like guys are in roles because the coaching puts them in those roles. And it's a weird situation where like if they were stinking it up right now, I'd be furious, but they've mostly been bad, but right now they've been better. So I don't know exactly how to characterize it. Today I'm feeling okay, but 2 weeks ago I was pissed.
Yeah.
No, oh, go ahead, Tom. Sorry.
No. I do remember, like, I think it was like you tweeted something or you said something like, I will go scorch earth. Like, I will, what was it? The Le FCON 1 or Le FCON?
Yeah, I remember saying that. Yeah. And you're normally pretty level-headed. And so, like, it's pretty rare that I see you actually get upset on the timeline, Tim. And so for you to express that, I was like, yeah, this is really bad.
It was bad. And credit to them, since I don't want to claim like there's correlation and there's causation. I don't know that I caused any of this, but right around when I started throwing my fit, things got better. And I am hoping they didn't need to see some tweets or have tweets sent to them to be like, oh, maybe we should look at this. But like, I see a coaching staff that knows ball, but at the same time is like juggling too much and dropping balls and overlooking things that they should have better internal tracking on so that they don't realize like, oh shoot, we're using Max Christie wrong. Like you should be able to see that. Like I shouldn't need to be tweeting out like, hey, you're calling plays 40% of the time instead of 60% of the time. That's bad. Like, so credit to them for making the adjustment. And we've seen them make adjustments in like 8 or 9 different ways over the past couple of weeks. But we got to that point and I was really upset because we were seeing things that should never be happening. And you don't see happen on more experienced coaching staffs.
Yeah. I think most of the Laker fan base was expecting them to be a top 3 seed as far as the Western Conference seeding is concerned. And so to go from the lofty expectations that we all had and thinking this team was a legitimate contender to the current state of the team, it's obviously very frustrating. And like you said, I think it's been a snowball effect. So, we had the injuries earlier in the year. Um, uh, Depending on your perspective, maybe some bad process and bad decisions from a coaching perspective. But then also too, I saw a tweet from Raj last night, and it kind of put it. And Tony and I kind of had a conversation about this as well. But I saw a tweet from Raj from Lakers Detailed, and it kind of put everything in perspective about this team. So he said, since the in-season tournament, 17 games, Lakers have been outscored by 84 when AD is on the floor. Lakers have been outscored by 120 when LeBron is on the floor. And the Lakers have been outscored by 94 when both are on the floor together. And so, and it's not to say that they're not as potent as a duo as they have been in the past, but I just think it's kind of a microcosm of who this team is currently. They're just, if you look at those numbers, and we describe AD and Bron as being two top 10 players, it's like you look at those numbers and it's like it's kind of unbelievable. And just wanted to get your thoughts on that. I mean, it's like when I hear the numbers in my head as I'm reading them, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't compute. But what are your thoughts on that tweet and those statistics?
Yeah, it really speaks to how poorly things are going, right? Like we kind of expect like, we're going to win those minutes, but then when they're both out, we're going to lose. And then it's just a matter of like, how available can they be? When they're losing their minutes, like that's a problem. And
Absolutely.
looking at like some of the most used lineups since the end of the in-season tournament, almost all of them have been outscored, it looks like. And to an extent, it is some of it is process based, where like we could be doing a better job, from a defensive scheme standpoint, doing the right things, or offensive scheme wise, we can be calling plays more, which we know is better. We could be, running better plays. Like if you run a pick and roll, it's going to be worse than if you run a pick and roll with like a pin down on the weak side, because that pin down on the weak side forces the potential help defense to have a second job to do. And they can't do both jobs. They got to pick one. And if they deal with the pin down, great. We have a real 2v2 with our ball screen. If they ignore the pin down and they try to help on the ball screen, great. We've got an open catch and shoot three. And so little things like that we've seen be up and down this year, or, things like sequencing plays and using counters. Like if we're going to run one play and there's a specific way to stop that then makes it easier for us to run a second play, we got to run that second play. We can't just keep trying to, put the same square peg in the round hole, even if the defense is ready for it. And we've seen those things kind of ebb and flow throughout the year. And from my perspective, I've seen like 4 major segments of this season. We've seen before the in-season tournament, and if you look at that stretch of games, the Lakers were much more injured than they normally have been. They were calling plays at a really low frequency compared to the standard. And from a defensive coverage standpoint, we were at that time using Christian Wood, Jackson Hayes, and like drop, and we weren't using guys well. So it didn't go great. During the in-season tournament, the team was healthier. We, on average, had an entire extra available role player or rotation player available. So that makes a difference. We saw a much higher play calling frequency. And then during that stretch of games, we saw the Lakers switching and hedging and blitzing more. So they were using those guys better. So we saw scheme on offense, scheme on defense, and health at the same time during the in-season tournament. And we saw them kick butt during that. The 10 games after the in-season tournament, they were still healthy, but they were not calling plays well or frequently. They were not using guys well in coverage. This isn't part of the health thing, but Christian Wood in 8 of those 10 games had 8 or fewer minutes. Max Christie in 9 of those 10 games had 17 or fewer minutes, and in 7 of those 10 games had fewer than double-digit minutes. So like we weren't unhealthy, but we were benching some guys that could have added value, along with having really crappy scheme on both ends of the court. And that's when y'all saw me getting pissed on the timeline. In the 7 most recent games, since around the time the staff started catching heat, we've seen the team be much more injured. Again, like around 3 guys missing per game instead of 1.5. But we've seen the play calling frequency rise. We've seen the scheme coverage usage, improve. We've seen guys used in better roles. So like I am seeing recently better process, poor health. And I mean, like as soon as we get healthy, I expect this team to start winning games. But really that in-season tournament like was the only stretch of the year where we saw everything clicking into place. And another way to look at this is like this year during the in-season tournament games, we had 0 back-to-backs and we had 0 games where we were missing 3 or more rotation players, along with running good scheme. During all other non-in-season tournament games, 56% of our games have either been a back-to-back or we've been missing 3 or more rotation players. So like these have been, we're talking about like 2 different teams basically from a health standpoint, from a scheme standpoint. It's bad to be losing the LeBron and AD minutes, but a big part of that is scheme and health. And right now, one of them is right and the other one should get better. But if it doesn't, we're not going to see the results improve.
Gotcha. No, yeah.
It's rough.
It is what it is. Yeah, it's rough.
Yeah.
As far as how certain parts of this rotation has been used, like there was a there was a portion of the season where Christian Wood wasn't getting any play time at all. He was just getting, DNP. Was there anything that you saw, and I guess you could kind of say similar things about Max Christie as well? From, I know you watched the games multiple times. Is there anything that you saw that made that make sense, made those decisions make sense?
Yes, in that both were performing poorly within their roles, but it was the roles that were the problem. Like,
okay.
That's why if you go look at like I don't know what like EPM or DPM or box plus minus say, but if you look at our LeBron data at Basketball Index that estimates players, impact per 100 possessions, like Max Christie has not had a good offensive impact this season. And it's not that he isn't a good off-ball player. It's that he's been used as an on-ball player way too much. And so like right before he was getting benched, he was being asked to do more than he's capable of doing and wasn't doing well with it. And so they said, this guy's not playing well. We need to play him less, which is a way to handle the situation. I would have preferred, and we've since seen them reinsert him into the lineup and just shift his role to actually match what his skill set is. Same thing with Wood. This guy's getting torched in drop coverage. That's because he's bad at drop coverage. Like use him in something else. And now we've seen them bring him back and use him to switch, use him to hedge, and then magically he looks better. And so I think they took a rational course of action, but it was one where they were missing a better answer from my perspective.
Gotcha.
And the good news is they've since figured that out, and now we're seeing both of those guys being used well.
No, absolutely. Christian Wood is,
yeah,
he's played really well in the minutes that he's played for the most part from what I've watched recently. I definitely was confused by the decision, especially in the last game, that Max really didn't get much playing time in the second half, and they went with Skylar Mays instead. When Skylar Mays has been with the team, 2 weeks max, I think. That decision didn't really make much sense to me. But
yeah, I also don't agree with that one. I think Mays is a better pick and roll player, or Mays is a better pick and roll player, but like that's not really necessarily what we needed to have on the court. Like I think Max would have been a better defensive option and been more of a fit with that off-ball role. So I'm with you in terms of like not agreeing with that specific decision.
What are we looking at, Tony?
So you basically say B-ball index. By the way, I am a subscriber. PGM is a subscriber. So if you want data, if you want basically to take a look at your team and your player, your the favorite one would be the headshot plot, the scatter plot. It's actually pretty dope. This is a good program. I really like it. It's very informative. But Tim, I did this for a second while you were talking. Logged into B-ball, did this, which is the luck adjustment offensive rating, luck adjusted, relative luck adjustment, defensive rating. Um, just walk us through if you can, just for a moment. What does that mean? Because I asked you this on the DM, and I think the people don't know what that really means. So
Okay. Yeah, man, absolutely. And I think how I use the word luck to apply to multiple situations may be a little confusing. With data like this, uh, understanding there are certain things in basketball that are just kind of a coin flip. It's just, some days it's going to go one way, other days it's going to go another way, and you don't really control it. We look at those things, like for example, like free throw percentage. When let's say, I'm shooting free throws when Tony's in the game, and I'm usually an 80% free throw shooter, but I shoot 60% when he's in the game. He got a little lucky. He didn't do anything to make me shoot worse. But then when he's off the court, I shoot 90%. That's going to make his like plus minus data look a little bit better. And so looking at things like that, looking at like individual player impact on opposing lineup 3-point shooting, that's something we know from a lot of research. It's just a bunch of randomness. So there will be guys every year, and for most players, the luck factor isn't huge, but for some guys each year, like for example, Emmanuel Quickly last season, when he was on the court defensively, opposing teams like missed all their threes. And when he was off the court, they hit all their threes. So it made his on-off defensive data look much better than it probably should have been. He's still a good defensive player, but it made him, he was the luckiest defensive player. And looking at the other seasons of his career, we don't see that same thing. With these luck-based elements, year to year, it's just kind of random. These, I think at a player level, that can be really valuable, and we use that for our LeBron data. These relative luck-adjusted the luck-adjusted offensive and defensive ratings are kind of looking at this at like a team level and trying to see more of like from a process standpoint, were we winning or losing our minutes, not necessarily based on the results. And then the relative piece of it, and you'll see that more if you go to displaying values instead of grades, just kind of, if I'm remembering correctly, yeah. So instead of like your offensive rating might be like 120 or whatever, the relative one is going to be, we see here for like the Clippers, they're a plus 2.35. They're 2 points above the norm. Gotcha. But their actual luck adjusted O rating, the one next to it, is 118. So that is just kind of like basing it off of how much above or below zero, or above or below average are you, is the relative piece of it.
Gotcha. So in this case, when we're looking like, and by the way, I have to scroll down because the team that we're talking about is not in the top. Hey, we're top 20. I don't know what top 20 of anything is, but we are right here. This little guy right here. I know,
I see a lot of orange and red. That's not good.
I saw. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like at minimum, if you don't understand the data, just understand that red is not good. Red and orange is not good either. So if you lack understanding in terms of what the numbers mean, at least look at the colors, because it's not good. Like, it's really not good.
But we try to make it easy. Color coding, or you can look at grades or percentiles. You shouldn't need to know what a good number is in any of these. Let the color coding and the grades and percentiles tell you whether somebody was good or bad.
And looking at this, and I've looked at a lot of data in terms of like NBA stats, everything on Twitter, your data as well. My question is, knowing that we're 40, we're literally like halfway there, and in our relative standings and whatnot, like I still think we can make it to 6th seed, we can make it to 5th seed, maybe, depending on what the top teams do, like the top 6 teams actually perform. But my question is, like, I feel like it's a lot to overcome, and maybe that's a fan perspective. And you've been seeing a lot of, like, I think the last 5 games or so, you've seen some progress. Do you think the rate of progress is enough to overcome the deficiencies that we're looking at?
I do, if we can sustain that growth. I think like it's not at its final form. Like, I'm not saying, hey, they fixed everything, we're all set, they just need to keep doing it. Like, they need to continue improving. what they've shown, and I'm saying this having tracked all of this stuff. So I'm not just like, oh, it looks like it. No, it is. Like, it is getting better.
Okay.
As long as they continue, like, for where they are right now with the process currently, they're in a place where once they're healthy, they should get rolling and be winning games. This isn't final form. We're ready to compete for a title. Like, to get to that point, you need to still like continue improving for today. And as long as they're now paying attention to these things, they should be. Looking at the standings, like, I feel confident we can overcome Houston. I feel confident we can overtake Utah. Like, there's some of these teams on here that the Lakers will be able to move past as soon as they get a little healthier. So if you're, my perspective is hang tight. The process is improving. As soon as we get like LeBron back, Rui not off, on a minutes restriction, like, we're going to be winning games. You're going to see fewer than 40% of the games on the season missing 3 or more rotation players. Like, if that number can be 20% for the rest of the year, that, that's going to be a handful of more wins. The improved process, the process right now, if you were to sustain this for the rest of the season, it would be substantially better than what you've done for the first half of the year. So keep doing what you're doing, keep getting better at what you're doing, get healthier, and like, absolutely we can see this team start rolling.
Yeah.
I'm seeing way too many like individual lineups that I feel good about and are showing like promise in the luck adjusted lineup data that, hey, just get those groups out there more and we're going to win a lot of games.
Yeah, you've been a proponent, and I think you've been saying this since the beginning of the season. I think it was you're a proponent of starting, well, not starting Max Christie, but you were very high on Max Christie, like being over Cam. And at this point, I think the data kind of shows like Max Christie should be starting at this stage. Like, it's kind of apparent, But playoff.
I think if you like make the roles comparable offensively and you use Max Smart, he fits into the starting lineup. Like, in the lineups where Max can be his best self are the ones where he's with LeBron plus either Reeves or D'Lo, and those are going to be the starting lineups. So when he can be, kick it, he's the team's most effective spot up player. When he's spacing and you get him the ball, either catching and shooting or attacking and closeout, he's been the number one guy on the team. He's been one of the most effective cutters on the team. Defensively, he's played at the point of attack, which is what Cam Reddish has done. He's taken on tough matchups, which is what Cam Reddish has done. And he's performed very well. Cam Reddish has performed better, but Cam Reddish is a worse offensive player, apples to apples, when you like put them in the same role, in a way that, I think once Max is in there, you're going to see this group elevate a bit. And we have seen that when we look at specific lineups. Like, 4th most used lineup on the season is D'Lo, Christie, Prince, Bron, AD. You could probably use that same group with Reeves, and we have seen them use that same group with Reeves, and it also worked. Either way, that has been a very successful lineup from a just normal net rating standpoint, but then also from a luck adjusted net rating standpoint, it's been even better than those raw results. And so we've used it when we had to use it. I think we need to start using it because we want to. And now that Reddish is out, you have a decision to make on who you're going to start. Christie's got to be that guy for me. He's been way too effective when used well, and it's time for him to step up and show that value. And throughout the course of the season, you need Max Christie's, you need Cam Reddishes, you need these guys that can step up when maybe you don't have your top guys available. But I think Christie is trending in the right direction, where he's, making it a conversation. And I've been saying since the beginning of December, I think he's ready to start. His defense has improved to the point where he's ready to take over those reins. This might be his chance to get in there while the scheme is cooking, while the team is hopefully able to get healthier. And, it's going to be hard for the coaching staff to look at a starting lineup that's probably played 2nd most minutes on the season by the time Cam's back and ignore how well it's played. So just kind of force their hand if you're Max Christie.
Speaking of D'Lo, D'Lo's been a very polarizing player for the Lakers with the way the season ended last year in the playoffs against Denver, and so far this season as well. Do you feel like D'Lo should be a member of the starting five for this team? And also, do you feel like he's being put in positions to succeed? Do you think he's being used effectively based on what you're seeing on the film?
Yeah, it's been interesting looking at him and Reeves this year, where the duo of them together, like defensively, hasn't been good.
Hmm.
But individually, like looking at the impact data for both guys, they have the same offensive role as a primary ball handler. They have the same defensive role as a chaser, off-ball defensive guard, and their offensive and defensive impact are also almost identical. And like I'm looking at a lot of the individual lineup data, and it's like, all right, the four guys with D'Lo versus four guys versus with Reeves, they're most of them are performing just about the same.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
I don't have a super strong preference there. Now we've seen a stretch of the year where Reeves wasn't shooting well. Like he's kind of started slow, and then since then has been phenomenal. D'Lo started a little slow at the very beginning, and then was really, really good. He was like the LA's second best shot maker for most of the year. And then in December, for a stretch of the season, he kind of plateaued a bit or dropped off a little bit. Um, since then, he's back to what he's normally doing. He's playing well. I think you can't really go wrong with either. Now, I
Gotcha.
think Austin's a better defensive player in terms of his like on-ball defense. I understand that this is the other context in which I've used the word luck, is looking at like Austin's one-on-one defense and looking at the shot quality of players he's allowing when he defends you. Like, how hard is your shot when you actually put it up, and accounting for who that shooter is. And the NBA uses a data provider called Second Spectrum that feeds the team some info. And I was able to ask somebody, and they sent the info over to me just to take a look at this specific thing. Reeves, he's actually like he's been worse than last year in terms of the shot quality he's allowing, but the actual like shooting against him has been like way more than we should expect. Like
Uh,
11% higher effective field goal percentage when you're shooting against him than expectations. And that is not something like for his career before this year, that luck factor was like -1%. Usually shot about expected, maybe a little worse. So it's not like this is always something that's happened with him. It is something that when we look at individual players, it's super random year to year. That's why I'm referring to it as luck, because I have absolutely no expectation that for the rest of the year, opponents will continue to shoot 11% above expectations against him. So
gotcha.
like
Okay.
his defense has looked and felt worse than from a process standpoint it really has been. And I think when you factor that in, he's the better defensive option than D'Lo. I think if you're just trying to put the best 5-man grouping out there, I think D'Lo's a better playmaker, and D'Lo shot better on the season from a difficulty adjusted 3-point shooting standpoint. But if you're trying to build 48 minutes of lineups, I think throwing Austin in with those groups with LeBron, so the fact that he's a slightly worse playmaker than D'Lo isn't as impactful, might end up with a great starting unit still, and then D'Lo off the bench can really just truly run the show. I think where I've seen D'Lo, I don't know, like where I'm from a D'Lo perspective, where I think he's probably upset is more like minutes based. Like,
Gotcha. Okay.
shouldn't be seeing these games where he's like barely playing or he sits entire quarters. Like, you should be able to throw together a rotation map that looks a little bit more normal. You shouldn't have to have Austin play 18 minutes in a row and D'Lo sit an entire fourth quarter. Like, I don't know, make it a little bit more normal. Give them both volume. You're gonna play them a little bit together, but mostly keep them separate. And I think either way, you're gonna get some good results.
Yeah, that makes sense. So going in that same vein, just wanted to progress this conversation because again, like I'm like in my investigation mode, trying to figure this season out, and especially the month of December because we kind of talked about it, and you said it best is, D'Lo kind of had a weird start, then he ramped it up. November looked amazing, October as well, but came December and I don't know, it's a slump. My question is like, and I post this to I'll post this to playoff and then we'll go to Tim. But my question is like, did the IST do more harm, or was it Darvin Ham's usage of D'Lo? Was it just like what's the reason why we're here? Like I'm seriously trying to figure this out because before the IST, this team looked amazing. It looked together. It looked cohesive. Yes, we were healthy, but for a good stretch of November, a good stretch of October, we weren't. Like I remember Vando wasn't even in the lineup. I remember Gabe was what played 2 or 3 games and then he was out. Like the team looked together. Now it doesn't. And it's like that IST was like the breaking point, and from that point on, it's like everything went to shit. Excuse my language. Do you agree with that, or do you see something that I don't see? Did we start using D'Lo differently, or did just like what the hell happened? Like honestly,
Am I able to share my screen? I think I have
uh,
it loaded up. If you can throw it up on there,
yeah.
because
Give me 1 second.
I've got a dashboard that I know there are a lot of lines on here. Let me, I'm gonna remove some of these guys that
Yeah.
we're not gonna worry about it as much. We don't need to be looking at you. Okay. So of all of these lines, D'Lo is this orange one. And what this line is telling us is how good has his shooting been over time. This is basically an aggregate like points added over expectation. So based on how hard the shots are that you're taking and adjusting for that, how many points are you adding or kind of losing compared to what we'd expect? When the line's going straight up like this, that's really good. That means he's shooting really well. This stretch from like here, let's see. So here's the start of December and here's the end of December. This is the stretch here where it was still going up, but more flat. And actually for a stretch, it went down a bit. This was his December. His October, November was the trajectory here is much better. The December, not as good. Since December, going back to here's his first game in January, look at this trajectory, more straight up. So his just shooting has been substantially better in the months outside of December. And that's adjusting for the types of shots he's getting. We can look at other guys like Reeves was starting a little slow. Since then, he's been much better.
He's been on fire.
If we look at like AD, he started the year kind of slow. He was playing through that shoulder injury right here where he dipped a bit. Since then, he's been awesome. Last game, not good, of course.
Is that the one game?
This is the one game.
Oh
He went from,
gosh.
he was a whole 7 points he lost compared to what we'd expect.
Oh man.
Yo, that's crazy.
Oh
yeah.
man.
If I want to point this out, if AD's scoring performance last game from a points per scoring possession standpoint was the worst game he's had as a Laker in like 3 seasons.
Goodness.
And if he would have he scored half a point per possession. If he would have had like a normal bad game, we would have won that game.
Oh
for
yeah,
sure.
100%.
But like it was such an uncharacteristic game. Yeah, that's crazy drop. Down here we've got Vando, we've got Reddish. Hayes has been about average. Hayes gets really easy shots because he's at the rim, but he's not really overperforming on them. Here's Christian Wood.
Where's Vando? Sorry. It's just I gotta see this about Vando. I'm sorry. Like this is the one guy that's just
gosh.
it's going
down. It's not going up.
Oh.
And then last game he had a good game from a shooting standpoint. So that's him.
Like the complete opposite of AD.
My god, bro.
Here's LeBron.
Is that negative, by the way? Like
that is negative, yeah. So Reddish and Vando are currently both negative.
Oh.
Everybody else is Hayes is about 0. Everybody else has been positive. Here's LeBron. He's been the best on the air. Austin, actually, you know what? Austin just passed him last game. Barely, by like less than a point. So Austin has been the team's best shot maker on the season. LeBron's right there. D'Lo has been the 3rd best, but we saw that rough stretch. AD was right there and then dropped. Taurean Prince, of course, we saw him start negative, and then since then he's been working his way up. Here's Max Christie. He was negative for a bit, and then all of a sudden we started using him correctly, and he's working his way up. Yeah. Here's so Rui had been good and then has kind of stagnated for most of the season.
But that's due to injury, I think, more than
I think it might be. And just having that big body, like he's valuable. Even if he's not like super overperforming on his shooting, like having that big body out there able to do his job, like that matters. Because we're seeing the Lakers have to use some like much smaller lineups right now without LeBron, with Rui on the minutes restriction, getting him back, getting him, doing what he usually does is really good for this team. So to answer your question, Tony, I don't think it was that D'Lo was being used wrong. I think it was just that D'Lo had a rough shooting month, and it's well below his norm. And on the year overall, he's been the team's third best scorer. And this is for half court only.
So
Transitions different.
So can I ask a question now that I'm seeing this here, and it's a visual, it's a great visual aid if I'm being honest, but isn't it concerning that your top 4 players at this point, and then there's like a major drop off to the 5th? Like because I feel like that's a gap. Like that's a huge gap, because like that kind of spells like if Austin Reeves has an off night, the offensive load is basically on 3 players. Like it's like our offensive firepower is just not good at all. Like, sorry,
And-
maybe I'm speaking wrong, but it's just like that's a big gap right now.
Yeah, and understand that, like, if Prince had started the year better, like Prince since he got out of his shooting slump has been doing a pretty good job. Christie's trending up. Like, it's not that these guys are all negative, but there certainly is a large gap, and we see that gap in the impact data as well. Like LeBron and AD, they're top 10 guys offensively, they're superstars, and then D'Lo and Reeves have been about at the same level. I think Reeves has been a better scorer, as we see here, but D'Lo's been a better passer, which I also have data on. But then there's a big gap to the next group. And that's where Taurean Prince, I think now that he's shooting well, he'll continue to rise here and help close the gap. Christie will help close the gap when he's used correctly. But like getting Prince used more as an off-screen shooter, that sort of stuff, you're going to get more threes up because we're actively trying to create offense for you. You're not only getting shots when your man goes to leave to rotate, and you're going to be more impactful that way. You have more gravity that way. Just improving his usage is going to close the impact gap, and it's going to put him in more positions to get shots up, which is going to help. More volume will help close this gap as well, as long as he continues shooting well. So I think he and Christie will improve. I think Rui's underperformed what we should expect moving forward. I don't think he's at the same level as these other guys, but he should probably be a little closer. Christian Wood has been a bit up and down, but he certainly has underperformed what we should expect for him on the year, especially on his 3-pointers. Just looking at the rest of his career, he's been one of the most prolific pick and pop bigs in the NBA the past 2-3 seasons, and has just not done that this year well. So there are a handful of guys underperforming that some of it's usage and role based. I think Wood, you can complain about his offensive role as well, but some of it is just they haven't shot well, and we should expect them to shoot better moving forward, just because that's how these things normally go. But if you pick any guy for a short portion of the year, like Malik Beasley last season as a Laker was only a couple dozen games, you're going to fall victim to some guys go through shooting slumps. And, bigger sample size, we're going to see the cream rise to the crop, rise to the top. I don't know what I'm saying.
I do have a question. And one of the things that really has irritated me about this season so far, AD is probably one of the more polarizing players in the NBA. Even from the Laker fan base, if he has a bad offensive game, it's, people have a lot of bad things to say about him. And so I feel like what he does on the defensive end isn't valued nearly enough as it should be. But just from an offensive perspective, the thing that's really one of the more irritating things about the season is that he's been playing really well, and it's kind of going unnoticed because the Lakers have been so bad as a team. And I just wonder if you could take a moment to kind of put in perspective just how good he's been, kind of looking deeper into the stats and what you're seeing.
Yeah, for sure. And he's been really, really good all season defensively. Offensively, October, November, his shooting struggled, and we see that here. December and on, he has just been superstar level. And so overall, his data is going to be hurt by some of that, slow start to the early season. And that's not what you want to see. That's unacceptable for a superstar paid like he is. He's playing the way we want him to play recently. And when we look at the impact data, if I'm remembering correctly, I believe he's the 3rd most impactful center in the NBA this season, behind only Nikola Jokic and Joel Embiid.
Gotcha. Okay.
So He's up there. He's not at the same magnitude as those guys because they are the centerpieces for their teams in ways that I don't think we will see with AD as long as like LeBron is on this team, where they're splitting that load a bit. But he, especially once you account for how impactful he is as a defender, like he's right up there. And I think he's third. I don't think he's like a close third. But he's been really, really good this year. And I'm with you that like the team success has kind of dampened what could otherwise be a lot more praise for him. Like if Taurean Prince doesn't have a shooting slump, and if Darvin's calling plays more often, and they're using Wood and Hayes correctly on defense, and like that, all of that leads to more wins. We're probably hearing more about Anthony Davis today than we have so far this season. And hopefully, with that process fixed, hopefully getting healthier, hopefully the shot making more normal, we can get to that point. But it's totally fair to be like, this is not someone who's being appreciated the way he should be. We can't act like he's been playing like that guy he was early in the season.
Sure. Yeah,
if he were like this all year long, we should be having some serious discussions about him, but he hasn't been. He's been a superstar since then. So I can understand both sides of it. We're like, you got to appreciate him. He's underappreciated because the team's not doing well. What he's doing right now is phenomenal. But at the same time, started slow, and we didn't see some of his peers start that slow.
Gotcha. No, that makes sense. As far as Vando goes, and I know he's coming off of the injury that he got during the preseason, the heel bursitis, and kind of working his way through that. Because when I'm looking at the game, I don't feel like Vando has been as impactful on defense, and I didn't know. Have you taken a deeper look at his defensive stats to kind of dig into that a little bit more, or like, should I trust what my eyes are seeing, or is it a situation where there's like, kind of similar to what's been happening with Austin that you said, where players are just shooting way above average what they normally would? I was wondering what you're kind of seeing from Vando defensively.
Yeah, it's a good question. So in our impact data with our LeBron data this year, he's been more impactful this season defensively than he was last season.
Really?
And for most of the other years in his career, his best season was 2020, 2021. And then 2 years ago in 21, 22, he was slightly better than he's been this year. But so far this year, his defensive impact is high. The team plays better defense when he's out there. And I wonder, let me pull up like his pickpocket rating and passing lane defense. I'm curious if his defensive playmaking is on the same level. Okay, so that's been worse, and that's likely what you're seeing is when it comes to him generating turnovers and steals on ball, he's at the second lowest rate of his career, and at really the lowest rate of his career in the seasons he's played real minutes, and it's gone down every year of his career actually, which is interesting. And then with his passing lane defense, which is our stat that looks at how often are you intercepting balls and deflecting balls, playing those passing lanes, he's a good bit lower than he was any of the past 3 seasons as well. So he's at a career low in both of them, basically. He's still really strong defensively, and I think he's in a good role for him, and he's fit really well and helps enable some of the switching defense, and he rotates well. So he's good at a lot of things that aren't as loud and noisy as these two things, the pickpocket and passing lane defense. But yeah, we have seen him be a step below his norm with those. Now, offensively, we are seeing him kind of continue what he did with the Lakers when he joined the team last year, which was be like a bottom 5, bottom 10 offensive impact player in the NBA. And that's all like spacing based. And when we look at like the impact he has on teammates, you can just look at like, hey, why is LeBron not playing as well recently? It's not that he's running less or running less hard on defense. You can look at the data on that. You can look at like, all right, from mid-range he's fine, from 3 he's fine. Oh, he's not getting to the rim as well, and he's not scoring at the rim as well. He was he's at a 62% field goal percentage at the rim right now over the last 10 games. Right before Vando started the season, he was at 82% rolling 10 games. And when you look at like LeBron's finishing with Vando on court versus off court, he shot 23% worse at the rim. Reeves has shot 25% worse at the rim. Rui, 11% worse. Wood, 13%. Hayes, 8%. When you look at how often guys are getting to the rim, AD 11% less, LeBron 5% less, Reeves 3%, Prince 3%, D'Lo 12%, Wood 7%. When he's out there defensively, he's doing his job and he's playing well. Offensively,
He's just handicapped the offense.
Yeah, he turns LeBron and AD into jump shooters. Like AD's mid-range frequency goes up 11%. Bron's goes up 8%. And so they still get to the rim sometimes, of course, but especially in the half court, it really mucks things up, which is why the Lakers running weak side action with their set plays, especially when he's out there, is really important. And thankfully, that has been on the rise. And we just saw a season high for the team last game in terms of when you run a play, is there some sort of weak side action happening? Because that gives a shooter a job, like a Taurean Prince, or you could use it with Reeves or D'Lo, but it also means you have to have somebody screening. And Vando, it should be the shoe-in to be that screener every single time. And so I think that'll mitigate this issue, but it's gonna be a challenge. And as long as he's out there in lineups like with AD, I think it's gonna be tough. I'd love to see him solely operate off the bench, stagger him with AD as much as possible. If he's out there in lineups with like Rui, Braun, and like Christian Wood and like a point guard, he can be a screener and roller because he's a good short roll passer and playmaker. And he can be the only non-shooter out there instead of one of two, or with that Reddish lineup, kind of one of three where you're not feeling great about. So use him a little better. I think we'll see that improve offensively. But right now on the year, he's been the worst player he's been in his career because that offensive impact has been so much lower than its norm.
Yeah, that's shit. All right. Tim, I'll say this, man. You do rain fire when it comes to the data, and you do rain logic and understanding. So I do appreciate you because you've been a good instrument to the, like, in terms of like informing the fan base. By the way, this is a plug. If you do want more data, Tim has the Lakers exceptionalist. Tim, help me.
Yeah, so that dashboard I was showing with the shooting stuff, and so this season I have tracked all, let's see how many, 4,091 half court possessions the Lakers have had this season. And I track, did they run a play? If so, was it from 5 out, 4 out, 1 in? If they ran a play, what was it? Who did the scoring possession go to? What kind of, was it a spot up, a post up, an ISO? What was the result? How heavily contested was it? Who set them up? What was the lineup? All that stuff. Was there weak side action on the play? And so it's data derived from me sitting here and having to rewatch every single game and log every single play, because like I think I analyze pretty well. I think my eye test is pretty good. I've been trained in a film room. I've done that work. But you're always going to, miss little things here or there if you're, it's just so hard for your brain to compute everything and all 4,100 plays or whatever. So I lean on that, and that is that dashboard built off of that, and the spreadsheet itself. If you want to go back and say, hey, what did we run to open the fourth quarter against Utah? You can go see exactly what play. If you join if you go to my Twitter bio, Tim_NBA, and click the link in that bio, there's a link in there to the Lakers Exceptionalism podcast Discord. And we got to get both of you guys in there. I think you guys will have a blast if you're not in there already. Great community, lots of good conversation. As part of that, we've got like bonus pods and film rooms and stuff. But then also you can have access to this spreadsheet if you get to, I think it's the $5 a month tier, or it might be the $10 a month tier. But there's a bunch of other stuff too. So check it out if you're interested in more Lakers content. But yeah, give that a look. Give B-Ball Index a look. $5 a month for tons and tons of information. It's stuff we use, to help agents. It's stuff that a number of teams are paying for and utilize. It's some good info. I like it because I took the same approach with that I did when I was running our analytics in college. We're like, hey, you don't need to go read through a spreadsheet. You don't need to know what number is good or bad to be able to read through this. You just need to be able to read like letter grades or percentiles and color coding. And so it makes it much more accessible and easy for people who don't have a data background to understand, are we doing well? Or are we doing poorly in whatever one of the 500 or 600 stats we have is saying. So give all that a look.
Yes, please do so. Again, support the people that support us. You know, Tim is a good supporter. He's again the data and everything, and I'm also part of the Discord. It's just I don't use Discord that much. I apologize, Tim.
Okay.
It's something that I need. Hey man, it's I got 25 group chats in freaking Twitter. It's kind of hard to kind of like juggle all this, but I'll try to make time and be part of it. I'll make playoff join for sure. But let's just end with this closing and just yes or no kind of thing. Are we gonna make the playoffs? Let's just keep it a buck. Yes or no?
I'll say yes. I think the process is there. Get a little healthier. I think they can do it. If they don't, it's either because they've gotten much more injured or the growth we've seen from the coaching staff has dropped off. And if that's the case, I think it's time to start making some moves.
Yeah, I agree. Oh, just to add to that, what time frame do you think we do make a move? Like because we've seen the improvement by the coaching staff, we've seen some of the move, but how long do they wait? On the recording of this, we are less than a month away. So from the trade
Yeah.
deadline.
So, and I think you can look to make coaching moves. You can look to make trade moves. I think right now the front office's stance should be like, let's see what this roster looks like when healthy with good coaching. The only other time we've seen that, we won the in-season tournament. Can we do that again? If it, keep the process looks good right now, today, it wasn't, but it is now. If we can get healthy for show us a week of games where the team's fully healthy. And if that team looks like that in-season tournament team, maybe we're a little bit more chill, a little bit more nuanced with our trades. If not, you need to decide, can a trade move the needle enough that it's worth it, short-term and long-term? And then you adjust accordingly. And then from a coaching standpoint, you can't go to the coaches, a week ago, 2 weeks ago and say, hey, you're doing poorly. We need you to fix these 3 things and then fire them like 2 days into that. Like they need to give them a real chance to improve. We have seen them improve. And so if they were to fire them at this point, I think it would be an ill-advised move, but they should continue tracking these things. And I certainly will. And if they drop off and all of a sudden the coaching's bad again, then maybe you do switch some things up. So I guess that's my stance with either of those.
No, that makes perfect sense. Playoff. What do you think?
I would love for this team to make the playoffs. I'm hoping that they do. I do think that we will, unfortunately, if we do make it, I think we'll probably be a play-in team once again, which which sucks, with the expectations coming into the season. But I do think we'll skate in through the play-in.
All right. Yeah, that I'm with you. I think at minimum we hit to the play-in. I think a team with LeBron and AD, circumstances with Westbrook didn't allow it. Injuries, like I think AD at that season only played less than 40 games or something like that. So again, I think the Lakers are it's not the end of the world, but it is a fuck con, whatever you want to call it. Like it's there. All right, guys. I do appreciate it. Please subscribe to the channel, share this. If not, we are on playback. We are doing Lakeshow today every Monday through Fridays and also during the weekend. So I do appreciate you guys. Take care. Good night. And if you don't agree with this, comment below. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Peace.
Peace.
Soon as we step out the cage, we raising all of the stakes. Make no mistake, either you stay in your place or we putting you on a plate. Look at our face, we put the fear in the dirt.